Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. Yeah, I'm not, uh, I didn't write this one out, so sometimes I prefer to do that just because when I directly record something, I may speak slower, but and it might be a little less organized. But I think I put more feeling into what I'm saying. I'm a lot more. It's a lot more direct, like a conversation. So the subject of this one is that we live in the United States. We live in and have been indoctrinated to an abusive society. And think about the characteristics of abuse and and what the goal of abuse is. Abuse is rarely a matter of resources that can be used. You know, financial domination can be a form of abuse. To take. It's not that the abuser actually lacks resources at all. They don't really want the resources. They want to deprive the other person of resources. It is all about control, all the way up to sadism and murder. I mean, think about the uh, so many examples I can use, but you know, if you had the resources to feed someone and you deprive them of food, wouldn't you consider that abuse? Or shelter, safety? How about medical care? If you deprived a person of medical care when you have the resources to provide that medical care, and that person suffers and dies because of lack of medical care, don't you think that's abuse? Well, even before the pandemic in this country, there were over 40,000 people a year in this country that died from lack of medical care, mostly because they couldn't afford it. Even those that, you know, were able to get medical care, over 2 million people per year were declaring bankruptcy because of medical bills. Well, it takes up to 10 years to um, discharge a bankruptcy. So, over those 10 years, you've got a rolling number of people. So that means at any given time, you have 20 million Americans that are in bankruptcy because of medical bills. The numbers are actually greater than 20 million. So, don't you find that abuse? You got the resources to provide the medical care, but you're going to make you'll give them that care, but you're going to deprive them of economic financial security. Not just, and then it takes another 10 years after you discharge the bankruptcy for that to roll off of your credit rating. Isn't that abuse? That affects their ability, their employability, and that affects their ability to sometimes even rent an apartment, to buy a car, etc. This is abuse. This is abuse. And you're looking at a rolling 20 million people. And then you add the 10 years to recover your credit. So that's 40 million Americans at any given time that are in these conditions. Then we've got our military, of course. Yep. That, and our foreign relations. Caitlin Johnstone just published an article stating that we are the terrorists. If you've read my writing or seen my channel before over a period of time, you've heard me say this many times. We are the terrorists. In Yemen, we are supplying, number one, we're buying oil from Saudi Arabia, and then we're providing arms to Saudi Arabia. In their war against Yemen, which the UN and basically anyone that knows anything about it calls that the worst humanitarian crisis in modern history. And it's not all, rebels that are. Isn't it funny how so many Americans think that rebels here, they call themselves rebels, and they think that rebels are so great, and so many Americans here, think that American rebels and the American Revolution was a rebellion. So Americans are, by our own history, rebels. And yet, the rebels in Yemen, standing up for their own country, we arm their oppressors, their murderers, their torturers, their abusers. Why? Look at Venezuela. I pointed out before, Venezuela has the lowest homeless rate of any country in the Western Hemisphere. Why? Because they spend their money to build new housing for their own people. Compare that to us. What are we doing? If it doesn't involve giving money to a capitalist entity, then no, you can stay on the street. Even the new plans from Warren and Biden and so many. What are they talking about with addressing the homeless issue? Well, it's to turn around and give money to corporate investors, to corporate property owners. Yeah, because that's not going to help the flow of wealth to the top. Sure. What do abusers say when you call them out? They turn themselves into the victim. Poor me. Oh, they hurt me first. Or, oh, I was afraid. Well, in a case like Yemen or Syria or Iraq, and on, Venezuela and Iran and all this, that is like, a 6'8" wrestler saying that, he's afraid of some 4'8" person with advanced cerebral palsy in a wheelchair. I'm afraid they threatened me. How? Because they didn't like you? Because they actually said that you're an abuser? And so many Americans cheer for this. They see anything about another country that's negative, and they'll post it. They don't need any facts, any evidence, any proof whatsoever. They don't ever stop and think, well, okay, even if this is true, what kind of a threat is it? Not much of one. Our country our government portrays itself as us being, the top tier of technological, advancement, and yet for 5 years we've been dealing with, claims of all kinds of garbage around our elections, and and we're not responding by advancing technologically. We're responding by militaristic threats against other countries to the tune of $730 billion a year. Why don't you take $1 or $2 billion of that and invest it in the technology? Just a thought. That we have never heard at any point how Russia was a threat, except for a few Facebook ads, and half of those were after the election. No, all this is nothing but a marketing ploy so that you are in favor of buying more weapons, to kill more people, to get you complicit in the abuse. As a country, we are complicit. Our government has committed atrocities and has assisted in atrocities, from denial of medical care, to starvation, to homelessness, to destruction of property, to poisoning, to rape, to murder, war. Just try naming it. If the same standards which apply for abuse that are used in claims of abuse against a human being were applied to our government, if our government was a person considering our acts, our government's acts, then they would be committed to prison for life or given the death penalty in America. You cannot deny this. You cannot deny this. We let our old people, our elderly people, suffer from low income, lack of care, lack of heat, lack of air conditioning, lack of transportation. We let our young people suffer hunger, lack of medical care. When a family gets thrown out on the street, well, you're throwing out the children with them. We are abusers. Our country, if you're not standing up against it, then you're complicit. You're either against it or you're for it. You are not neutral. There is no neutrality here. There is no neutrality here. You're on one side or the other. There is no middle ground. So if you're not standing up against the abuse of our government, the abuse of capitalism, then you're definitely in favor of it. You're part of it. You encourage it. If you're not fighting against it, you are part of it. All right? So we have to recognize this, admit it, and then do something about it. All right? Please, if you share this video, discuss these subjects, If you can, please donate $1 a month to help expand the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.